So there's a lot of really interesting things on the horizon here in Pontiac, as Monica has been talking to. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about design thinking and how it can be used to address transportation challenges. So first, I'll just give a little bit of background on myself, and then I'll talk about transportation equity, and then design thinking and the process of learning from lived experiences. So I actually I started my career working for some national environmental nonprofits in DC in the nonprofit sector. And through the work that I did, I realized that a lot of the times we were trying to influence urban planning decisions. And so that's what really piqued my interest in the planning field. And so then I went on to get a master's degree in planning from Virginia Tech. And then I worked as a transportation consultant for ICF, which is a consulting firm in the DC area. And then after a few years of doing that, I returned to school again, and I am now a PhD student, as I mentioned. And a lot of my research focuses on innovation in the public sector, particularly how we can improve the use of public involvement to help inform better transportation solutions. So first, I'm just going to start with a really short video. Let's see. Hopefully the audio will play on this. We're just going to watch the first few minutes.
Trends episode 11. In this episode, we're going to be talking about transportation equity. So many Americans in the morning, day in, day out, they will, and they don't give much thought as to what life would be like if they didn't have their own car. But think about it for a minute. What are the things that you might miss out on, appointments or opportunities, if you didn't have your own car or access to great transportation at all times for wherever you need to go?
Anita Cozart is based in Washington, D.C. and is the Senior Director at PolicyLink. It's a national research and action institute advancing economic and social equity.
Transportation is kind of a pillar and underpinning for urban planning. And my first years of in the profession of urban planning, I was really focused on like land use, community development, and transit became a big part of it.
Access to affordable and reliable transportation can be the difference between success and failure in life.
There's a lot of kids that are having to make a choice, have $2.50 to get on a bus. Families are making choices that really limit their opportunities. So parents are having to decide whether or not they can do that enrichment program that leads to a mentor, that leads to somebody giving you a college recommendation, that leads you to getting into the most competitive college and getting a scholarship. And so it's just this domino effect where if a door is shut because of a transportation option or because of a option when it comes to your income, there's ramifications well into the next generation.
And you're relying on mass transit alone, it could mean hours on the bus every day, hours spent away from your family, and time lost is money lost.
In the case of working families, there are a lot of folks that don't have the same flexible kind of working schedules, that can't call when they're stuck at the bus stop and say, I can't finish the leg of my commute, I'll be in 30 minutes late. There's some jobs where that's just not acceptable, and they're moving on to the next person. When it's grandma or grandpa and they're trying to get to the doctor and they're trying to find someone to give them a ride because they can't bear to stand, waiting 30 minutes for a bus to come.
Cozart says the key to change is collaboration and bringing everyone to the table when plans are being made to build schools, libraries, grocery stores, and beyond.
When you have low-income people and communities of color at the table solving some of the problems that exist, you're going to get the better solutions because they know what trip they're not taking. There's no data that's going to tell you the trip that you're not taking to the doctor. You have to hear that from the wisdom and insights of people who are in these struggling situations. And when they're at the table to help solve those solutions, they're giving the inputs that are the true ones that help us come up with the right solutions.
I'm going to stop it here. Move on. But I want to revisit the quote that Anita Cozart said towards the end of the video clip. And so she says, when you have low income and communities of color at the table, solving some of the problems that exist, you're going to get better solutions data that's going to tell you the trip you're not taking to the doctor. You have to hear that from the wisdom and insights of people who are in these struggling situations. And when they're at the table to help solve those problems, they're giving the inputs that are the true ones that help us come up with the right solution. And so that last sentence in this excerpt is what in the research world is referred to as lived experience. So lived experience is defined as personal knowledge about the world gained through direct and first-hand involvement in everyday events. And this personal knowledge is very valuable. So let's just take a few minutes to reflect on our own lived experience with transportation. So on this slide, I've listed several different modes of transportation. And as I read through them, just think to yourself whether or not you have personal experience, no matter how little, with each type of transportation. If you want to maybe just count them on your fingers and then share in the chat what your number is, we can do that as well. This is no judgment zone. I'll raise my hand for those transportation modes that I'm familiar with to participate as well. So we have personal vehicle, either own or lease. Walks for transportation, bike share, subway, streetcar, bus, e-scooter, ferry, car share, ride hailing, Uber, carpool, school bus. So as you can imagine, we all have very varied lived experiences. And also, let's think about the role that technology plays in your transportation experience. For me, my smartphone is really critical to my lived experience. I use it to find out when the bus is coming, to get walking directions, and to use Uber and Lyft. So these days, when we're thinking about how people travel in their communities, it's also really important to think about both the mode of transportation, like we're seeing here on this slide, but also the tools like smartphone and computers that also help us plan and execute our travel experiences. So this question is what really fuels my work as a researcher. How might we learn from lived experiences to improve transportation access? So this slide lists some of the common ways that decision makers hear from the public as part of our planning processes. So we have public hearings, which are formal meetings that are held to get public input on proposals. There are review and comment periods where the public can review and submit comments on proposals. And then sometimes there are citizen advisory boards where members of the public can apply to serve on a board that then provides input to decision makers. But these traditional methods have been critiqued in planning literature as nothing more than rituals designed to satisfy legal requirements. Scholars have found little evidence that public engagement actually influences transportation decision-making. These processes lack meaningful engagement of vulnerable and marginalized groups, and often, as is the case with public hearings and review and comment, the public is being asked to respond to a proposed solution that has already been developed by planners. And so there is that missed opportunity to really learn from the lived experiences before generating the ideas and the solutions. So design thinking, which Monica has been talking about a little bit, is the focus of my dissertation. So I'm looking at whether or not design thinking might be a better way to involve the public in the transportation planning process because it focuses on lived experiences. And so design thinking is defined as a human-centered approach to problem solving, creativity, and innovation. And specifically, I'm looking at the potential that design thinking holds as a public engagement tool. And so that's why I'm here in Pontiac today to study what the Incubator has done in Pontiac and how they're using design thinking to engage with the greater community. So we're just going to watch another really quick video that gives a brief overview about the design thinking process.
So the people that live there, they are there, you know, but
important in this moment.
Hi there. Have you?
In this very moment when we had this explosion Hi there. Have you noticed that the world is full of problems? There are big, hairy problems like poverty and disease and small annoyances like misplacing your keys. However, the geniuses at Stanford have come up with a process that will broaden your perspective and help you create better solutions no matter the type of problem. This process is called design thinking. It encourages people to explore new alternatives, creating options that had not existed before. Design thinking is successful because it focuses on the needs of the user. It's more than just good ergonomics, it's about understanding the context and culture of the stakeholders involved. This understanding is found using direct observation and qualitative data, which produces stories that people can really empathize with. Once the research is conducted, the problem solver is more apt to define what the real problem is, after diagnosing the true strengths of existing solutions. Because design thinkers learn by doing, these radical ideas are then made into simple prototypes that test possible outcomes. Rapid prototyping speeds up the innovation process because we only learn about the quality of our ideas when we test them in the real world. The process of ideating, prototyping, and ultimately lead to success. So, why design thinking? The process provides a method and greater creativity and better solutions faster. Suddenly, the world's problems are simple and manageable with design thinking.
So this is the guy. You don't know what you said. Why?
So to recap, what we learned in the video, design thinking is a multi-step process, but it starts with empathy, which really seeks to understand the end user. And this is where the lived experience comes in. And then those insights are then carried through the remainder of the process where the problem is defined, ideas are generated, and then tested and refined. As to close, I just want to leave this takeaway with you all today, that innovation comes from understanding the user. And we need to be able to understand, to innovate. Lived experiences with transportation are varied and they're complex. And so understanding transportation needs inform better solutions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Monica now, but thank you all for your time. And here's my contact info if anyone would like to reach out to me to learn more about my work. I'd be happy to chat. Thank you. Conversation finished. So do you want me to? I'm going to close out my. You're done now? Yep, my presentation. So do you want to go back to the mirror?
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Lindsay? We're really blessed that she is with us.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that presentation.
What do you think about it from a city perspective, Councilwoman Megan?
Well, I think we should talk to the people that ride the bus and find out what they would like in their bus stop and what they think is wrong with their with their riding experience or the bus stop experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's certainly the point is, and that would be a fantastic way to apply design thinking to the community.
Because we have a fairly high bus ridership in the city, because one reason is because our auto insurance is so high, people cannot have cars.
Yeah, that is a very common barrier to transportation, for sure. And there's a lot of really interesting work that's being done by some research at the University of Washington who are thinking about the technologies that people utilize with transit as well. And like you said, insurance can be cost prohibitive. Sometimes people cannot also, they can also afford smartphones. And then how can they engage with the transit system without a smartphone? Are there still ways for them to get real-time transit information? Or now with Apple Pay and things like that, where you can just tap to pay to enter the phone, it's still really important to have analog ways to pay the fare as well. So all of those are really great questions to ask and things to consider.
Yes. Because I have a neighborhood just adjacent to me that I can see right from my house. And a lot of people in that block or two radius, most of them do not own cars.
Mm-hmm.
And the bus stop, I can see the bus stop from here.
And yeah, do you mind me asking what it looks like? Is it covered? Does it have a shelter? Is it just kind of a sign that's stuck in the ground?
It had a shelter. It no longer.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Micah 6 community group at Webster School on Huron is going to be adopting that bus shelter.
Oh, fantastic. Mm-hmm.
I think they plan on trying to bring some of it inside their building at the front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm going to put the mural board back up and move on to our next segment. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.